back again.
Yeah, we have a couple more questions left about studying abroad in China. Once again, this is Isabella Greene, who has studied abroad in China in 2014 and 2015.
And this is Jeremy, who is ready to go to China.
So I guess we can go right into it. What kind of topics do Chinese people consider unpleasant or taboo to talk about?
Well, first of all, I want to start out by saying I would avoid talking about politics or religion, just as being a foreigner in China. However, just as a rule, do not criticize the Chinese leaders. No one that's a member of the party or the president, prime minister. Just avoid being critical of political leadership at all costs, and specifically, do not discuss the 1989 democracy movement or what we know as Tiananmen Square here in the United States. Just do not discuss it. It's very taboo. As a matter of fact, it's not mentioned in Chinese history, modern history. So just avoid it. And you definitely do not want to talk about Hong Kong, Taiwan, or Tibet. And I probably would not talk about the Cultural Revolution either, unless I had an excellent command of Chinese. But I would go ahead and avoid that one too. And also, do not, avoid anything that you think is going to cause you like conflict. But occasionally, you're going to have people that are going to come up and talk to you about topics because you're a foreigner and they feel safe and comfortable talking to you about it. But as a rule, you just want to nod your head, listen, just say things like, oh, really, that kind of thing, or I don't really know a lot about that, and just show compassion, nod your head, and try to shift to a new topic as quickly as possible. That's the best method of doing that. That way you don't offend anyone and you keep yourself out of any potential trouble.
While you were in China, did you observe any kind of dangers?
Let's see. As far as dangers, the dangers that I encountered was crossing the street because the traffic laws in China are not the same as they are in, say, other countries. So people tend to drive really fast and to where they're going. But I found the best way to cross the street was just to cross with the crowd and just be aware and use common sense, just the way you would in your own country. And you also want to avoid anything that's going to cause confrontation or get you into a fight, because you are there to study, not to start a revolution or anything like that. And the other thing you want to keep in mind is that if you are in a foreign country, what you do there as a foreigner is going to be very different than if you did the same thing in your own country. So if you are a foreigner and you end up in jail, you are a foreigner in jail. So you just want to avoid those types of things as much as possible. So just use common sense.
So we talked a little bit about things not to bring up or talk about in China. What kind of things did you find that Chinese people like talking about?
They enjoy talking to me about ancient Chinese history, especially about Confucianism or about the Analects, those types of things, especially the history of historical landmarks. I found that you really saw or heard the most historical topics when you were visiting the landmarks, because they're talking to their families about it. They're talking to, they're educating their children, so on and so forth. Chinese people love to talk about food, and they love to talk about their families, especially if their children are doing really well in school, or if they have a family member that has studied abroad in your home country, especially the United States. They love to talk about those things. So those are always really good topics.
And what kind of things did you find that Chinese people like to do for fun?
They like to, it really depends on age group, but I'm just going to give you a broad spectrum. They love to practice Tai Chi in the parks. They love basketball because with Yao Ming coming to China, that raised the popularity of basketball. They love, reading, karaoke, mahjong, which is a very popular game with tiles, playing with tiles, and bowling. Bowling, I believe, has become very popular because it's kind of considered a Western game, and some Chinese people enjoy doing activities that are considered Western. So those are some really good activities. And the Chinese youth especially enjoy going to clubs. So if you're and meeting foreigners. So if you go to areas such as Daogo or Sanlitun, when you're not studying, then you will meet Chinese people, youth.
And so to do a lot of those activities, you probably have to go out a lot. What did you find the standard public bathrooms were like in China?
A majority of bathrooms in China are going to have squat toilets, unless they're in a Western establishment, such as a restaurant that's owned by an American. There was one restaurant in Beijing called Crow's Nest, which was owned by an American from Wisconsin, and it did have Western toilets. But most of the time, you're going to see squat toilets. The airport has Western toilets, the Beijing Capital Airport, but this is mostly what you're going to see. And let me point out that sanitation in the U.S. is going to be very different than it is somewhere else. So when you first get there, you're maybe a little bit shocked. I'm going to be honest, you're going to run into like really pungent smells, but you will get used to it. It seems like you won't, but you will. It's just a part of the study abroad experience.
And another thing, whenever you're going out with people, you're probably shopping some. Was bargaining acceptable when shopping?
Yes, bargaining is always acceptable in China. Well, no. Let me not say always. If the booth specifically says don't bargain, you don't want to bargain unless they go ahead and offer you a lower price anyway. But if it doesn't, have at it. You don't want to bargain on food, though. That's the one place that it's not acceptable, or medicine, or any type of, or you're not going to bargain in the grocery store. But in the outdoor markets, silk market, yashao market, it's very acceptable, because generally their asking price is going to be way up there, because they know that you are a foreigner or tourist, and so of course they're going to want to make a profit. That's just part of business. But generally, whatever their asking price is, you can get it for at least a third of the cost. So, for example, there was a really beautiful notebook that I wanted that was 180 kwai, and I got it for 30. Now, mind you, I bought about 6 of them, but in most cases, you can get it for a lot less. But the key to doing that is to use Chinese, because if you use Chinese, that shows that they're used to seeing a lot of tourists, especially Americans. So if you are taking the time to learn the language and learn the culture, then the vendors are going to have a sort of a different viewpoint of you. They're going to have a little bit of respect for you, and also, it also helps to talk to them in Chinese about who they are. I remember being in a booth and I wanted 6 wallets to take home, and I asked the price, and I couldn't get it. What helped me toward getting the price that I wanted is I took the time to talk to him, and he had the cutest little girl, so I was like asking about her and that kind of thing. So that always helps, because that shows that you see them as people, not just a blank face of selling you souvenirs that you want to take home.
You mentioned buying food. What kind of foods did you try that you didn't expect to try?
Scorpions. I in no way planned to eat scorpions while I was in Wangfujing, but my friends bought them on a dare, and they did not tell me. And there were 6 of us there, so all 6 of us had to eat a scorpion on camera and take pictures of it. And it was delicious. It was very delicious, but I was not planning on that. It was a little baby scorpion, and the flavor, it kind of tasted like chicken. Now, that big giant scorpion, like what you see on TV, I refused. But yeah, I didn't expect to try that. It was very good, and I had that in Wangfujing. And also, I had not planned to eat like KFC or McDonald's or that kind of thing, but there are just some days you're going to want Western-style food. So I had McDonald's in China, and I felt like it tasted better, and it was not as greasy. I also love green tea ice cream bars. Like, I tried a lot of food. I go on and on about the food I tried there, but yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
That can be another video series.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find the food etiquette to be like in China?
Well, slurping is acceptable. You can bring a bowl to your face and eat rice. That's very acceptable. However, the uses of chopsticks is something that I want to point out. You do not poke chopsticks into the rice, and the reason why you don't do that is generally in Chinese and Japanese culture, for that matter, they put the chopsticks in the rice generally at funeral ceremonies. So that's considered very offensive. The best way to use chopsticks when you're not eating with them in your hand, you just place them on the right hand side with the chopsticks pointing like so. And that'll keep you from avoiding any issues there. But slurping's good.
So you talked a little bit about the food etiquette. What about etiquette with nonverbal nonverbal communication when talking to Chinese people?
Well, with nonverbal communication, Chinese people tend to stand close to you. I think part of that may be a cultural thing, and the other reason is that it's very populated in China, so there's not a lot of space to stand far apart. However, on the other hand, eye contact is kind of depends on if the person is a superior or an equal. So they wouldn't look their father in the eye, or they may not look at their boss in the eye. I'm not really 100% sure on that, but I do know that they do tend to stand close to you, but they don't hug unless you are a close friend or family member. So that's sort of some things to point out. And when they shake hands, if they do shake hands with you, it's going to be with the right hand.
And so what about with host families? Do you have any advice for preparing gifts for host families?
For preparing gifts for host families, I would stay with fruit or tea. Fruit is a very popular, very appreciated item for gifts in China, and tea is as well. But I would avoid putting number 4 of anything in the gift, so you wouldn't do 4 apples or 4 oranges. You want to do 3 or 5 or 8, because 8 is a lucky number. But 4, the reason why you don't use 4 is because it sounds similar to the word for death, so you don't do that. And you also don't use anything with the color white, and no clocks or knives. So those are some other gifts you may want to avoid.
And our last question is, what souvenirs do you recommend purchasing before you leave China?
I would purchase a tea set from a tea shop. I would buy Chinese tea, whichever my favorite. There's numerous styles and colors that you can and types that you can buy. I would buy any interesting Chinese books because they are very hard to find, at least in the U.S., and more expensive. So like HSK books, Chinese culture books, language books. There's so many to choose from. So I would buy those. And then, of course, like the fans, wallets, small, really nice gift items, anything that's lightweight that you can put in your carry-on or your check-in suitcase. Because you're going to end up leaving those clothes that I mentioned before. You're probably going to wear all of them out during the duration of your stay. So you can just throw those out and just put those things in there and in your suitcase and have gifts for the family. But yeah, you definitely want to purchase tea sets. And I want to add a little note about airport when you're going back to your destination. Just as you did coming to China, you want to get there 3 hours before, and you especially you want to make sure that when you go back that you tell the taxi cab driver specifically which airport you're going to, because there are 2 in China. Make sure you tell them that you're going to the Beijing Capital Airport, and make sure that you know which terminal you're going to, because there are 3 terminals in the Beijing Capital Airport. And if you go to the wrong one, you could very easily miss your flight. So that's very important.
Great. Thank you for answering my questions.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.